Welcome back to Wok Wednesday, guys. This week we are doing a recipe from my second book, Hong Kong Diner. I can't wait to show you. It is one of my favourite recipes from this book, Cantonese Pork Chops. So there's this awesome Dai Pai Dong. What? There's this awesome Dai Pai Dong in Hong Kong. Dai Pai Dong means big licensed store. And it's actually sort of in this hidden alley in central Hong Kong that I love. And the owner of the store, Mr. Singh, or Brother Singh they call him, kind of dresses in a sort of white singlet every day in the same clothes. It looks a little bit dirty, but it's definitely the best wok chef I've ever met. He bashes the pork chops out to get them really, really tender, but also sort of slices into it, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to marinate the pork in some garlic, ginger, spring onion, and then a few ingredients that I'll talk you through in a second. Once the pork's marinated, if you do have time, then let it sit overnight and it'll really take in that flavour and tenderize even more. And much like many Chinese dishes, your Cantonese pork chop dish at a takeaway or restaurant will be different every single time. This is my take, and there's a real combination of different sauces, one of which is Worcester sauce or Worcestershire sauce, which is definitely not a Chinese ingredient, but in Hong Kong, it's one of those English ingredients that Hong Kong chefs believe make something taste Western. So it's kind of like a half Westernized, half Chinese dish. I've got some garlic, some spring onion, everything for the marinade finely chopped, and then a little bit of ginger, getting roughly chopped is fine. I've got some red onion. As usual, School Wok style is massive, so I'm going to go for half of this red onion. Just slices of red onion. And this is to finish off the pork after the initial fry with that caramelized sauce. And it's a sort of spicy, sweet, and sour sauce that I'm going for. I'm going to pop that onto the plate that I'm going to serve on. It's not much of a wok clock really, just some onion and then some sauce, but the pork is next. So the pork chops you deal with quite specifically. So I'm going to take them off the bone, but keep the bone in the marinade as well. And I'll cook the bone separately because I always find that there's lots of flavour on the meat around the bone. So just leave a little bit of meat around the edge of each pork chop bone, and I can go straight into the marinade bowl. I do quite like sort of pork chops and loins because you've got sort of little bits of marbling of fat in between the meat. But if you've got any excessive bits of fat like this piece here, then you want to just take that off as well. Leaving a little bit on, but not sort of one chunk of fat. And the next part of preparing this is the sort of tenderizing of the meat. And what you want to do is you want to bash with the bottom or the top side of the knife. So turn it over and really go at it. And if you are in the streets of Hong Kong and you do get to see Mr. Singh or Brother Singh doing this, he'll be doing this in the street, in the alleyway, for quite a while because this dish is so popular and he's got lots of pork chops to get through. It only opens in the evening at like 6 p.m, but he'll be bashing the pork chops in the morning. Turn it around. Same on the other side. I'm actually going to deep fry this as a whole piece and then cut into it just before I stir fry it to finish. So you can see these sort of rivets here from the tenderizing. And what those rivets do is, yes, it's helped to tenderize, but also with all this great marinade, all the marinade bits are going to kind of stick in between those little rivets. So we're going to marinate now with a pinch of salt and white pepper, some light soy sauce, sesame oil, and then about a teaspoon of sugar, roughly, and a couple of tablespoons of corn flour. You want to give that a really good massage through. Just be careful with the bones because they can be a little sharp. And that corn flour there is not to make this crispy like a sweet and sour, but just to give a sort of slight creaminess to the marinade and help to stick those bits of ginger, garlic and spring onion around all of those pork fillets. And that small amount of corn flour also helps to sort of crisp the outer edge of the fat and the meat. And then when I get this sticky sort of Worcestershire sauce wrapping around the pork at the end, it'll just immediately caramelize around each piece of pork. Make sure each piece has a good amount of that flavor, and then you're ready for the first fry, which is a deep fry. Just gonna make up the sauce quickly before we start frying. So I've got about 4 tablespoons or so of sugar, and then some chilchao chili oil. I go for sort of 1 to 1.5. Try not to get all the oil. Use the paste. That's where all the flavour is. Worcestershire sauce, the key ingredient to this, and that sort of sour flavour is going to mix in with the sugar. And then we've got some rice wine, Shaoxing rice wine here. More for the liquid than anything, but it will also give us a little bit of sort of sweet aroma. Jinkiang black vinegar, and that will work really well with the Worcestershire sauce. So at the moment, it's sweet, sour from the vinegar, the Worcestershire sauce and the sugar. I'm going to sort of thicken this up with some ketchup. Hong Kong cuisine. Always got a little bit of ketchup somewhere sneaking in. And then some dark soy to deepen that colour. And that's going to caramelize really quickly because of the sugar in there. Proper Chinese wok street food this. My sauce is ready. As I said, a very simple wok lock of ingredients here. And then now I'm going to deep fry my escallops of pork. The first thing I'm going to fry is the bones because they're slightly thicker and they need to cook through a little bit longer. Now I want an immediate seal on this, so high heat. Make sure your wood's fizzing in that oil. And that'll be about 180 degrees C with that fizz. Start with those pork bones. And then once the bones are done, then we'll get the escallops in. You can see the corn flour around the edge of that, just sort of crisping around the edge of each bone. I'm going to turn the heat down to medium, just so that it can cook the meat around the bone a little bit more. Once the bones have got a nice golden brown colour on them, then you want to fish those out, and then hit the heat back up to a high heat again. Next, once it's nice and hot, your actual pork chop meat. And they're quite big. And the reason why I keep them whole like this is to keep its succulence of the meat all the way through. So I'm going to chop them in a second once they've had this initial fry. So you're just cooking it and sealing it immediately all the way around each piece of, or flattened piece of pork. You can see once you start to deep fry it, that it almost starts to sort of thicken up or get its thickness again, even though I've bashed it out. But all the ginger, spring onion and garlic is stuck to the pork still from that bashing of the meat. I don't want to overcook it, so I'm going to start to bring those out. I'm going to pop those straight onto my chopping board, in fact. So we're going to go chunks of pork, and it's nice and succulent inside, as you can see. Quite like to keep them as good size bites. That was a terrible cut, but okay. From here on in, it's a quick flash fry of the red onions, smoking hot wok. You don't want to fry your onions for long at all, because when the sauce goes in, it's going to caramelize very quickly. And I kind of want the onions to hold their shape a little, if they can. No extra oil from here. You know, we've deep fried the pork already, so there's going to be a lot of oil in this. It's not a healthy dish by any means. Got a good amount of sauce to wrap around that pork. High heat, make sure it's smoking hot. You can see the smoke building up here. I'm going to pour that around the edge of the wok and bring that to a vigorous boil. I want to see it bubbling pretty much all the way through the wok to the center if I can. And then at that point, your pork is going to go in. Fold that through, or if you dare, give it a toss, and it flicks through much quicker, straight out. Look at that. I am literally salivating just looking at this. If I can say so myself, I've done well. That is so good. Little hint of chili from the chili oil. The Worcestershire sauce and the black vinegar just work really well together. And then that sweetness to balance it out. A wrapping sauce around that crispy meat. Love it. Don't forget, guys, if you like this type of sweet, sour, savoury flavour with a little bit of spice, subscribe to our channel, check out all of our other social media, like it all, and you can click the link on the bottom, just here, for the recipe.